Good morning and welcome to the Allergy Therapeutics PLC interim results investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted anytime by the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Just simply type in your questions and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it is appropriate to do so. Before we begin, I'd like to submit the following poll. I'd now like to hand you over to Manuel Lobe, CEO. Good morning.
Thank you very much, Alessandro, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And here we have the presentation team. Joining me is Nick Wyman, Chief Financial Officer, and Alan Bullimer, Head of Business Innovation. I'm CEO of the company, Manuel Lobet, of Allergy Therapeutics, and we are here to present the half-year results of the fiscal year and the 6 months ending on December 31st of 2021. This is a pivotal year because we are running two very important clinical trials. One phase 3 trial for grass allergic patients and one phase 1 trial for peanut allergic patients. But before getting into details, we are showing here the typical disclaimer slide for compliance purposes. And then we have here a snapshot of bullet points about our company. We are a fully integrated biopharmaceutical company based in the UK. We are a leading provider of subcutaneous aluminum-free vaccines. We provide treatments that have the potential to cure the disease, not just the symptoms. In fact, we cure most of the cases allergic rhinitis. We are focused on severe patients. We became a company as a result of a spin-off from GlaxoSmithKline in 1999, as a result of a spin-off of JSK in Worthing, West Sussex. And we started as a very small business unit. Since then, we've been growing almost double-digit for more than 2 decades. We listed the company in 2004 in the London Stock Exchange in the AIM market to finance the development of our key products in the US market. Today, we have a market cap of roughly 166 million pounds with the ticker AIM. We are headquartered in Worthing with about 600 employees, and our flagship product is the PQ platform that enable a unique concept in the market, which is ultra short course treatments. The process of desensitize patients, which is how do we cure allergic rhinitis, it's most of the time cumbersome. It takes a long time, and we have developed, thanks to our disruptive technology platforms, these ultra short course concepts that allow us to desensitize patients in a fraction of the time than our competitors do. And we apply these disruptive technologies in areas like allergic rhinitis with the MATA-MPL platform, or more recently in the food allergy market with the VLP platform, where we are developing a state-of-the-art vaccine for peanut allergic patients. These are the headlines of the 6 months to December. 48.7 million pounds commercial revenue on a nominal base. That represents a 10% decline, 5% decline on a constant currency basis. We had headwind on currency, and that's one of the few declines we've got on our 23 years of existence, and it's mainly explained by a strategic decision we have made to streamline all the non high value products. Therefore, we have stopped selling kind of Me Too products that were not high margin, highly differentiated products, in order to be able to focus on the really high value, highly differentiated products. And that has had a one-off impact that we are happy to take. But as you can see here, the underlying portfolio is growing 4%. That's not in line with our average because we have got experienced also some other factors like COVID and some others that we'll explain a bit later. But in spite of that, we have generated a good revenue of operating cash flow, a profit of 12.5 million, a net profit of 6.7 million, and a good cash balance of 41.4 million. The two key relevant points on the clinical part is the VLP peanut trial that Alan will explain in a bit more detail later, and the grass mata MPL, the grass vaccine phase 3 trial that also will give you more details in a couple of slides. These are the three key pillars of our development. The first one, and probably the base of this business, is the business in Europe. That's expanding our business in Europe. We are running a proper revenue business model with, as I said before, fully integrated. We have 2 manufacturing facilities. We have our own sales team. We have presence in 32 markets, most of them in Europe, but also in North America and Canada and Asia, in South Korea. We have subsidiaries in the most important European markets and distributors anywhere else. We have been growing, as I said, almost double digits for more than 2 decades in a market that is mature and crowded. So we've been growing at the expense of others, mainly taking market share from our competitors and leveraging on our current infrastructure. So we've been, in general, growing more on the top line than on our operational expenditure. That has put us in a position where we are profitable before R&D, and therefore gives us stability and makes us our company unique in the sense that we have an hybrid component. We have this revenue model that gives us cash flow generation before R&D, but also we have the potential to be a fast grow company by developing our pipeline and have this kind of biotech upside by developing the pipeline. And this is what we do with equity issues from time to time to develop the pipeline, where we have later stage assets like Pollinex Quattro in grass, in its grass pollen version or ragweed version, or 3 slides ragweed version. Or recently, as I said before, we made the first inroad in the food allergy market with this state-of-the-art peanut vaccine. So the pipeline development is probably the most valuable part of the business. The project that takes more attention from investors typically is the peanut vaccine, and we understand this because it's a totally a breakthrough product. Alan will talk a little bit more about this. And the third pillar of our strategy is the preparation for the US entry. This is a project that we've been working in for the last 15 years probably, developing 3 clinical development projects. The PQ franchise, Pollinex Quattro Grass, Pollinex Quattro Ragweed, and Pollinex Quattro Trees. We reached phase 3 with 2 of them, grass and ragweed, and phase 2 with trees. We have completed 16 clinical trials, invested more than $100 million on these programs, and with the most advanced ones, which is grass, we are going to perform the last study before submission, that this G306 study will be the base for our submission in the US and in Europe. In Europe, we'll submit right after the trial. In the US, we'll have to complete a safety database before submission of our biological license application. So I will now hand over to Alan to give us a bit more flavor of our technology. So hand over to you, Alan.
Thank you, Manuel. As Manuel said in his section, you know, the immunotherapy area that we focus on is in those patients with moderate to severe allergic rhinitis. We have a number of products that are marketed and registered primarily in Europe. You can see those at the top of this slide for grasses, trees, and venoms, and ragweed, which is registered in Canada. But the key parts of the portfolio are those two products highlighted in red on this slide. So the first is the Grass Mater MPL, where we are currently running the phase 3 studies. We have recently completed an exploratory phase 3, and we're now moving forward into the pivotal phase 3 later this year. I'll touch on that a little bit later. And the second product in the pipeline that is most exciting is the peanut subcutaneous immunotherapy product, the VLP peanut. This product has recently completed an ex vivo study in collaboration with Imperial College London, and is about to enter first in human trials later this year. So we are very excited by that. So I'll kick off with the peanut program. Peanut is an incredibly severe allergy. The onset of symptoms is almost immediate, and it requires a very delicate approach in order to successfully switch the immune system to becoming tolerant without running the risk of causing an allergic reaction by using the product itself. We have to remember allergen immunotherapy is using the very thing the patient is allergic to in order to drive that immune response. And peanut is incredibly severe. So what we have done, for those on the call who may be less familiar with us, is we have taken the peanut allergens and we have bound them to the surface of a virus-like particle. Now, this virus-like particle is based on the cucumber mosaic virus, so it's completely harmless. It can never infect a human. And what it does is it acts a little bit like a Trojan horse. So when the VLP peanut is injected into the patient, the immune system does not see an allergen. So it doesn't trigger the allergic responses that are associated with peanut exposure. The body instead recognizes a virus, and it activates parts of the immune system that are specialized to deal with viral infections. Now, what this means is the virus, complete with the peanut allergens that are bound to the surface, are taken up by the immune system. They're spread through the lymph nodes, and the virus is broken down, and the peanut allergens are released past the initial defenses that would ordinarily cause an allergic reaction. This means we're able to train the immune system to become tolerant without kicking off those those first line of defenses. We're in effect fooling the immune system to give a change in the immune response without initiating an allergic reaction. Now, we've got some great data that we have received from the ex vivo study in collaboration with Imperial College. We did this with blood samples from peanut allergic patients. Obviously, we need to demonstrate that the product is safe before we go into humans. And what we saw is a 24-fold reduction in basophil activation and therefore subsequent histamine release after we had exposed these blood samples to VLP peanut, compared to if you had exposed the blood samples to natural peanut extract. This is a huge reduction. It demonstrates that the vaccine itself is hypoallergenic. and yet analysis of biomarkers further down the line indicate that the drug itself, whilst not causing an allergic reaction, does trigger the immune cells that we would associate with inducing tolerance in a patient. So this is great news. This is exactly what we want. We're activating the parts of the immune system we want to activate, and we are not activating the parts of the immune system that we don't want to activate. Then moving forward into this year, the phase 1 study, the first in-human study, we have called the PROTECT study. And we had the great news earlier this year in January that the FDA in the US had cleared our IND. So we are now able to progress, and we will be doing that later this year. The study design itself is based upon a number of different cohorts. So we will start with the injection in healthy volunteers before we move into skin prick testing in peanut allergic patients, and then we will go into subcutaneous injections into peanut allergic patients. So as you can appreciate, because of the severity of the peanut condition, you increase your intervention in a stepwise fashion as you go through evaluating the safety of the product. We will have some biomarker data, some idea of efficacy, but obviously it's a phase 1 study. It is not a powered study to look at efficacy, but we will be in a position to announce some of the data in a stepwise fashion as we receive it, and we're expecting top line around H1 23, looking at our current timelines. The batch itself, the manufacturing process for making the product has been successfully made. It has been QC tested and released. So we have managed to go from bench in the labs up to large scale manufacturing. I think it's around a 400 litre batch size. So it's quite a huge increase, and everything is ready for the trial. So we are incredibly excited by the opportunity to enter, the food allergy market, which the total market is estimated to be around 8 billion a year. The second key product and the next thing that makes this year and next year a pivotal year for our company is the grass product. The PQ grass. We ran the exploratory field study, the G309 study, last year, and we met the primary endpoint. And just to note, the primary endpoint is a combined symptom and medication score. So that is a measure of how the patient feels. So nasal, ocular, etc., different symptoms, and how much medication they had taken. Did they need to take any antihistamines? Were there any corticosteroids, for example? And the combination of symptoms and medication acts as the primary endpoint. And what we demonstrated was a statistically significant difference between active and placebo. In the extended pathology, as you can see on the table, we had a nearly 40% reduction in combined symptom medication score. That is a huge result. I am not aware of any field trial in the allergy immunotherapy world that has approached a 40% reduction in symptoms. So we're incredibly excited to kick off the clinical study, the G306 study, which will start later this year. We also have some additional data from the G306 trial that's probably worth mentioning. The first is that we ran quality of life questionnaires, and we saw improvements in patient quality of life in the active compared to placebo. The graph that you can see in the middle of this slide indicates that the benefits that were seen were comparable regardless of geographies. So whether the patients were based in the US or whether they were based in Germany, because remember, this was a trial that was run over different sites, different countries, the effects were the same. So there's no geographical factors that appear to be influencing the drug performance. We've got a huge body of work looking at biomarkers and analyzing those and I've picked out a couple here. So specific IgE and specific IgG were consistent with what you would expect to see if a patient had been treated with allergen immunotherapy. So therefore, a reduction in IgE. IgE is the antibody that causes the symptoms of allergy, and IgG is, we saw an increase, and that's the antibody associated with a protective efficacy. And as you can imagine, for a product that's been on the market in Europe for a number of years, both dosing regimens were shown to be safe and well tolerated. Looking forward to later this year and then the results the year after, we're now moving into the pivotal phase 3 study. This is the G306 study. We've taken the learnings that we've received from the exploratory study, and we've put them into the G306, and that is planned to commence later this year. For field studies of aeroallergens, we have to run the studies according to the pollen season. So typically we would dose the patients, say October, November, December, January, ready for the pollen season in March, April, May, for example, something like that. So we're always bound by a calendar for when we can start. So we expect this study to start in Q3. We've increased the sample size to give us further confidence in the data that we've got. And once the study is completed, and should the data be what we expect it to be, we will then just need to complete a safety database for the US FDA before we can launch the product there. And then in Europe, this should satisfy the needs of the TAV process, and we could launch the product through Europe. The US market itself is around $2 billion, and about a quarter of that is grass. So peak sales could potentially be circa $300 to $400 million. And I think another thing that's worth pointing out, especially looking at that 40% improvement in efficacy, improvement in combined symptom medication score, is that it really meets the unmet need. Specifically in the US currently, where patients are faced with up to 100 injections. No one's going to want to take that much time off school or work. 16% of patients finish the treatment as it currently stands in the US. 50% of patients don't even start the therapy once they hear how much they have to do. So by being able to have this level of efficacy in just 6 injections is outstanding, and it really could be a game changer. So with that, I will hand over to Nick, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. Moving on to the second pillar, Alan's talked about the the pipeline, which is one of the, as Manuel discussed, one of those drivers for potential biotech change to the business. The second pillar that has the potential to do that is the US market. Alan's already talked about the size of the market for grass, the 2 billion as overall allergic rhinitis size of market, with the potential for $300 to $400 million peak sales for grass. I should point out that grass is just the first of 3 products within our portfolio which could be brought forward into that market. The second one would be ragweed, where we've already done phase 1, 2 and 3 trials, and we sell a product in Canada using the platform. And the third one is a birchall tree product, which potentially would have about half the peak sales of the grass, but would also add to a nice portfolio of products together. As Alan has said, the US market has a huge potential. Currently, most patients who go to an allergist, they receive up to 100 injections, and the reason for that is that the allergists start with a concentrate and dilute it down and start treating the patients at almost a homeopathic level and gradually move up to a maintenance dose, which takes a long time. It's not a GMP manufactured product, and also it has the problem that if you actually move states or move doctors, you have to start all over again. So it's very, very cumbersome process. And as Alan's pointed out, it's demands a lot of time off, both from school or from work, and that's the reason for the only 16% of people who actually complete it, and the 50% of people of the patients who actually turn up at the surgery never even starting the treatment. So there is a huge potential for this product and the whole portfolio within the US market. I should also mention that the US market tends to have pricing levels which are a factor about 2 to European prices as well, which makes it a very advantageous market to be in. Moving on to the beg your pardon, and as I already mentioned, the other products in the portfolio, the ragweed and birch trees, which we would have, and as well as that, potentially in the midterm future, we also have the VLP peanut, which we would see going through the same channel. In other words, being treated by the allergists in their clinic. Moving on to the third pillar of the strategy, which is the European trading business. As Manuel mentioned, that business is a successful business which has grown quite significantly over the last 23 years. This year, we've done some streamlining of the portfolio to remove some of the Me Too and not so technically advanced products from the portfolio, in order to focus in on the skip products. That's the subcutaneous products that we think bring the most benefit to patients. And you'll see on the right hand side what I've done there is to take the net sales and take a like for like on the current portfolio as it looks, and you'll see we have seen good growth over the last few years for that portfolio. Revenues were affected in the year partly by phasing. We had an impact of COVID within the manufacturing facility, and also COVID affected our markets both in Italy and Germany. Italy's been affected throughout the whole COVID period, as most doctors actually sit within hospitals, and therefore they've been pulled off to either look after COVID patients or to create vaccines. In Germany, the clinics sit separate to the hospital, so there's been less disruption. But in this last year, particularly in December, in fact, all of the allergists were pulled off allergy in treatment to go and give booster vaccines in Germany, and that obviously affected the sales. Overall, though, there are areas of the business that are still growing very strongly. We have strong growth in Spain, Netherlands, UK, and parts of the rest of the world. And also in the product portfolio with Pollenex, Venomil, which is the treatment for bee and wasp sting, and a Caravac, which is a house dust mite product that we sell in Spain. Moving on to the financials. Looking at the revenue, as Manuel has already mentioned, we had revenue of 48.7 million. That was down 10% in actual terms and 5% in constant terms. I should remember, listeners, that actually we sell about 95% of our product within the EU. So we are quite exposed on the revenue side to the euro. The gross margin dropped from 78% to 74%. That was driven by the lower sales, the impact of COVID on the manufacturing facility, where the volume production slowed down in December. So we're producing less batches and obviously creating less stock. So therefore, more of the costs flowed through the P&L and FX. There's been good control on the overheads, and that left us with an operating profit pre-R&D of 12.5 million. that's our measure of how well the trading business is going. As Manuel pointed out, we consider the research and development as part of the investment in the future. That's what's driving the pipeline, whereas this trading business is something separate. So overall, a good half year considering the situation, solid performance, and a profit after tax of 6.7 million. Moving on to the balance sheet, I think the main areas to talk about here are within the working capital. The inventories were up slightly despite that slowdown in the factory, and that was really caused by the fact that with Brexit we have a longer supply chain as we ship product through Spain for its second testing and release, and then on into Germany and Austria and so on. We finished the half year with a cash balance of 41.4 million. We've publicly stated that's enough to pay for the GRASS phase 3 trial, which Alan was talking about, the G306, and the phase 1 peanut trial with a certain amount of debt. And speaking of debt, we finished the period with debt of 2.9 million. That's actually the debt that we have sitting within the Spanish subsidiary, as we acquired a business some years ago that included a certain amount of long-term debt. Just after the year end, we also announced that we'd replaced the 7 million overdraft with a 10 million pound revolving credit facility to give us more security over our funding. And finally, I'd move on to the summary and outlook. So as Manuel said at the beginning, and Alan talked about, this year is a really pivotal year for us, with two very exciting trials starting this year and reading out in the next calendar year. First is that phase 1 PROTECT VLP peanut trial, the first in human trial for this highly innovative new peanut product. And the second one is that phase 3 pivotal GRASS trial, which is taking place in the US and Europe, which is our key last trial, subject to the completing the safety database before we can file that product in the US. We expect a continued solid commercial performance in Europe, and to continue focusing on our SCIT and innovative approach to patient treatment. And finally, just a quick summary of what the timelines look like. And as we've already talked about with those peanut and GRASS trials starting in 2022, we're expecting the peanut phase 1 trial to read out in the mid-year of 2023, and the GRASS phase 3 trial to read out in the autumn of next year. So some very interesting inflection points, although I should point out that the phase 1 peanut, as Alan has talked about, will be done in cohorts, and we will be reporting as we move from one cohort to the next. So we should get some news during the period before we get to the final results. And with that, I hand over to Alan, who will talk about, who will do the Q&A.
Manuel, Nick, Alan, just could I come in and say thank you very much for your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions using the Q&A tab situated in the top right hand corner of your screen. But just while the company take a few moments to review those questions submitted today, I would like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard. As you can see, we've received a number of questions throughout today's presentation, and thank you to all the investors for submitting those. Alan, could I please ask you to read out the questions and delegate the responses appropriately, and I'll pick up from you at the end.
Perfect. Thanks, Alessandro. So the first question is, I noted that the 39.5% reduction in the GRASS MARTA MPL 309 trial, whilst it was statistically significant, it does not seem particularly high. Was the effect as strong as we had hoped for? it is an incredibly high figure. I know 40% might not sound like a huge improvement if you're thinking, if you're comparing it to 100%. But as I mentioned, that there's no trial that I'm aware of that's even come close to 40%. This is by far and away, it exceeds what we had hoped for. And it links a little bit to another question that's come in, that says, assuming you get a similar level of effect in the pivotal phase 3, how likely is it that the regulatory body will approve it for use? To give some kind of gauge onto what that 40% means, products have been approved on 20% currently, and so to see a 40% increase is a huge improvement on current treatment paradigms. So I hope that answers that question. The next question, for the VLPs, how do you plan to execute trials, market entry, and funding? Nick, do you want to cover that one?
Well, I've already talked about the VLP peanut phase 1 trial. Naturally, if that's successful, we will look to get further funding to carry forward those trials to the phase 2 and the phase 3 trials. Thinking about the rest of the portfolio, we haven't really talked today about the very early part of the pipeline. We do also have some other VLP candidates which are actually outside of the allergy area but use the immunotherapy technology. And again, we would look to get further equity funding to bring those products through. At the moment, they're simply being assessed to ensure we have a good route forward for them. But obviously, having brought the VLP peanut all the way through, as Alan explained, we've done all the scale up and so on. We've learned a lot about this technology, which we can apply to other products.
Perfect. Thank you, Nick. The next question, I think, is for me. Could you please update us on the current situation regarding competitors' peanut allergy products? So there's obviously Palforzia, which is registered, which is launched, the peanut powder. They are in the market. They're first to market. There are some other companies that are attempting to enter the space. So there's DBV with their patch offering. So this is a dermal patch, much like a nicotine patch, that delivers a controlled dose of, again, native peanut allergen through the skin. I am aware that they had some issues with the FDA. They had some concerns regarding CMC, so chemistry, manufacturing control components. They had some issues with, I think, patch adherence, and I think they're reworking that. I don't know exactly where they are with that product, but I know that they are continuing. But broadly speaking, it's a very similar strategy to the DBV, to the Aimmune product, in terms of a set dose of peanut delivered to the patient. And then there are some other products that are looking at using monoclonal antibodies. These function very well, but they're incredibly expensive, and they are transient in their nature. So if you stop delivering the monoclonal antibody, the effect wears off. So the benefits, the upside to the VLP peanut product that we're developing is that you should be able to have a limited number of injections. You don't need to take it every day like the tablet, like the powders or the patches, and you should permanently change the immune response. It shouldn't be a transient effect. The next question is, for the grass allergy product, what do you anticipate the primary endpoint will be for the pivotal phase 3? The primary endpoint will be the same. It will be combined symptom medication score. That is the endpoint that is recognized by the regulators, by the allergy societies, and it is the most clinically meaningful, relevant measure for improvement in well-being and medication use for allergy trials. Given that many of the products you currently sell in Europe are sold under a named patient process, how long will you be able to continue to market these products without submitting new regulatory dossiers? Manuel, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, this is depending on the country. Country by country, they have different regulations. The first country that started this process was Germany. That this was called TAB regulation. That means that therapy or allergy ordinance started around 2010. And now we are facing the last part of this program. We have under this framework our Polinex Quattro products that are the upgraded version of the Polinex products that we have registered in Germany, and the Polinex Quattro are the same product but with the MPL adjuvant. So Polinex Quattro Grass is going to be submitted in Germany probably in 2024 after the G306, and will follow Polinex Quattro 3. And so we are running our products under the TAB timelines and framework. We don't know what the other competitors are doing, but we are within the timelines, and we have our plan properly structured to be within the timelines. It is an endeavor that we support by regulatory authorities, where most of the named patient products will have to be regulated. There will be few products that will not be under this framework because are considered rare allergens, are allergens that only suffer a limited number of patients, and therefore would not be justified big investments in big clinical trials to get them registered, and therefore a small percentage of products will remain as NPPs. But most of them, in a matter of few years, let's say 5 years, will probably be all the German market regulated, and other European countries have started the process too. So probably by 2030, all the EU markets will have completed the regulatory process.
Thank you, Manuel. Our next question is, if the peanut vaccine trials are hugely successful and the product launch goes according to plan, do you anticipate to upgrade the current portfolio? I would say that the products that are related to aeroallergens in terms of pollens will stay on the PQ platform. It's a tried, tested, and trusted platform, and as you saw from the G309 with the 40%, it's a platform that works. However, food allergies, allergies where there is an incredibly strong allergic reaction, and maybe some of the more unusual allergens, such as things like cat dust mite, certainly a potential to use the VLP technology there. We have the rights, we own the license to use VLP technology in all areas of allergy. And as Nick mentioned, we also are looking at this is a very, very early phase. We're looking at proof of concept, but looking at using the VLP technologies in areas outside of allergy. So we're certainly looking to maximize and leverage the benefit from the VLP portfolio. The next question is, the placebo effect in allergy trials can be a real problem. So well done on your 40% effect on the grass trial.
Can I take this one, Alan?
Yeah, sure. What are your top recommendations for trial designs for minimizing the placebo effect?
So thank you, Tim. In fact, we are really proud because that's the big problem on these trials. And there was a previous question where 40% didn't seem that relevant, and it's extremely relevant. I just want to remind here the audience that there was a very high-profile failure of an allergy trial a few years ago, where there was reached a 60% placebo effect. If you add 60% to this 40% that we've got, you get 100% efficacy on severe patients that do not get control, cannot control symptoms with antihistamines or corticosteroids. So these are patients that cannot go anywhere else. And we offer them levels of protection of, if you add this placebo effect, maybe 60 was extraordinary, but we could add 40, 50%. So with this 40%, we are talking about levels of protection of 80, 90% on patients that cannot control symptoms with symptomatic products. So that's extraordinary, this result. And I think that's the really, in injectable vaccines, that's the real problem in doing these trials, to go through this placebo effect, because we have to go through very subjective questionnaires to get through the total symptom and medication scores, where the placebo effect is really big. We have invested a lot in this G309 trial too, in biomarkers, because what we would love is to get biomarkers where we could take blood samples and only measure some different antibodies, and then you just get an objective measure. But that has not been established yet by authorities, and we still have to rely on CMC as Alan said, as the gold standard for these clinical trials. It looks like in this G309 study, after many trials, after tens of millions of investment, we have found the secret sauce of how to deal with it. And of course, we are not going to explain how to do it. So we believe that we could be probably the only SCID company able to go through this hurdle successfully. So maybe once we have all our portfolio registered, we will publish how to go through this placebo effect hurdle.
Thanks, Manuel. And then our last question is, could you explain in a little more detail what 40% improvement actually means? Is it a 40% reduction in the use of drugs? Which part of the CSMS contributed most? The combined symptom medication score is a number of different questions that the patient answers every day. How they felt, various. It's on a 0 to 3 or 1 to 4 scale, and it's a set of questions asking about how they feel in their nose, in their eyes, general well-being, any medications that were taken. If you take, for example, one antihistamine tablet, you get a score of 1. If you take an antihistamine tablet and a corticosteroid, it doubles, etc. So it's a compounded measure that combines all of the different facets of the things that affect a patient. The 40% improvement, and linking as well to what Manuel said, in that the placebo effect itself in these trials is huge. It's well known as well in asthma trials or in any trial where you have a patient-reported outcome, that the placebo effect is huge. If you've had an argument with your other half that morning, it doesn't matter how clear your nose is, you're still going to report that you feel pretty miserable. And this is the downside. This is why, and as Manuel was talking about, why it's important to look for biomarkers, which is a big tenet of what we're doing. So having a 40% improvement, remember that is on top of the placebo effect that's already built in. So the patients, it's very hard to quantify. So in terms of your question, what does a 40% reduction actually mean? It's very hard to quantify that because everyone feels slightly different. But because the CSMS is the accepted primary outcome, a 40% improvement is a significant improvement on how that patient feels. It makes them feel like they can live life more fully. Perhaps they can go out and play with their friends in the height of summer, or they can go take their kids out to the park, where ordinarily they would have been unable to. And the last part of the question is which part of the CSMS contributed most. We haven't published that data yet, so that's going to be coming in the peer-reviewed publication when the full data set comes out. So as soon as that's published, notifications will go up on our website, and we'll let everyone know that data is available. So that was the last of the questions. So I will hand back to Alessandro.
Alan, thank you very much for that. I think you actually managed to address all those questions from investors. And of course, if any more come through, we'll give those questions to the company and we'll publish those responses on the Investor Meet Company platform. Just before redirecting investors to provide you with their feedback, which I know is particularly important, Manuel, could I please ask you for a few closing comments?
Yes, I would like to thank the audience and thank for these interesting and clever questions. And just to remind the audience, this is a company with a very interesting nature, which is this hybrid component. We are, in a way, a traditional company with a well-established revenue base, generating good cash flows pre-R&D, but which gives us stability and safety, but also with a very exciting upside potential as we develop our pipeline. That could be the kind of biotech growth value upside type of company. Next 12 months will be very exciting. We have two catalyst points: the readout of the grass vaccine at the end of 2023, and the end of the phase 1 trial for the peanut vaccine at mid-2023, where we will then start as soon as possible the phase 2. So thank you very much for your time, and we are available for our investors anytime you need. Thank you.
Manuel, Nick, Alan, thank you very much for updating investors today. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as you'll now be automatically redirected to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, and I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of Allergy Therapeutics PLC, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation, and good morning to you all.